Well, hello, everyone. I am Billy Dees. Welcome to the podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled that you are here. If this is your first time here, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, on down the line. And you can follow me on Twitter at Billy Dees. On the Zoom machine today, I have Yohance Salimu. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. My life is awesome.
Awesome. Did I say your name properly?
The last name, you tweaked it a little bit. So it's Yohance Salimu.
Salimu.
But I never correct people twice. So
okay, well, I'll be sure to try to get it right. Salimu. All right, very good. Yohance is the author of a book titled The Underprivileged Overachiever, a Crenshaw Story. The Crenshaw refers to the area of Los Angeles, Crenshaw High School, where he grew up. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. That's correct.
And to kind of set the tone for this, you have a quote that you use, and I want to read it to the audience. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, you'll be a man, my son. And that is by Kipling.
Correct. One of my favorite quotes. On the back of every single email I send, everything.
Explain a little bit about what that means.
So there's ups and downs in life, and how you deal with those ups and downs, how you treat triumph. If you're a sore loser, if you're a bad winner, you really want to be on the level. You want to be equally yoked and equally ready to take on life's challenges and receive praise as well as receive bad news.
Right. Well, that's good. That's, it's one of those things, you can't let things get you too far down, and you can't let yourself get too high, because those are both kind of, you never know which way you're going to go, and you'll fall a long way if you're not keeping a well-balanced attitude is kind of how I took it. Your book, here again, and I'll say the name again, Underprivileged Overachiever, a Crenshaw Story. It is available in paperback. It's available in Kindle, and it's also available in audiobook. You actually read the narration. How was that like? Was that pretty tedious?
That's a difficult experience, because regardless of how well you think you are at voiceover and how well you think you can flow into the words that you put down on paper, there's still an element of when that camera turns on, when that recording starts. It's like, how perfect are you going to be when, every syllable counts and every inflection is supposed to tell the story. So there's a very big piece of editing to that picture that more than doubles the amount of production time that I didn't understand before I got into that studio of working with that professional team. And I had a really good time with it.
Yeah, and you do all the voices and everything when things are quoted and stuff, and you did a fantastic job. To kind of set the stage, here again, this book is a memoir, and obviously the book is about you, so let's talk about you. Let's kind of set the stage of where you came from. Can you describe the area that you're from, the neighborhoods, and what was life around you in your upbringing?
Yes, I can. So I'm from South Central Los Angeles, and the gangs, the drugs, the hellacious amounts of crime that existed all around me as I grew up. And it was like being a second-class citizen inside of a second-class society at points, because even though a lot of my other friends were poor and still going through the same struggles, here I was even less than, and I was homeless, actually, a lot of different periods as I was growing up. And I would still be that guy who I still wanted a challenge. I still wanted to do well in school. I still wanted to make the best for myself and for my family. And so a lot of the, I'd say, setbacks that I experienced, I didn't let them hold me down. I let them be my fuel to drive further.
My understanding is, and I could be wrong, I want to ask your opinion, that Crenshaw area in the 90s, very much obviously problematic. My understanding is that area has a little better feel to it now. Is that true, or does it still have issues?
there's a lot more economic development in the area as far as businesses coming and different transportation systems with them building different train lines and whatnot. So the area is definitely getting better, and I see it improving. Just a couple weeks ago, actually, I was down there doing a community service event where we were doing a food drive, and just chopping it up with the congressman and talking to the community and giving out just the resources that the community really needs. I got to see like, hey, these people are doing a lot better. These people are improving socioeconomically, even though there's still a lot more help and a lot more aid economically and socially that needs to happen in this area, a lot more development.
Oh, absolutely. Here again, for our audience to kind of set the stage for your story, what was your family like within this community?
What was my family like within this community?
Yeah, your structure. I know the story because I'm kind of familiar with it.
So structure, I grew up with my mom. My father was sort of in the picture, and he was more of a lifeline than a provider. But whenever we really needed him, we could call him and we could rely on him up until the point where his health started to decline.
Yeah.
And he passed right when I was still an adolescent, still coming up. And I really needed that role model figure of having that father figure in my life. And throughout the book, you'll actually see there's so many times where I lean on a lot of male figures and mentors to get that support that I needed.
Sure. At what age did you realize, you mentioned how you were viewed in the community. At what age did you realize, how does it start to happen that you realize there's a life on the other side of the tracks that you haven't been a part of yet? How does that realization come into play?
So with a lot of youth, when you have a dream, when you see something that you want, it's all dictated by what's you can actually see. And sometimes that's through direct relationships with folks that you interact with, saying, hey, this guy came from the exact same neighborhood and he went to Harvard or he went to Stanford, or hey, look at this movie or this story that someone's trying to tell you about how this and that is possible. And that's what I clung to. I would find mentors. I would find different individuals who wanted to influence me. And I'd really grab onto their words and say, hey, that's what I want. I see that you're an engineer. That sounds cool. I want to do that. I see that you're a doctor or a lawyer. How do I get into that? How do I understand that field to study? And how is that going to change my life?
Yeah.
It's asking the right questions, which I found it's really profound to see someone young that you want to mentor and you see them asking the right questions because you want to divulge so much information and really help them out. And I was always hungry for that information.
You mentioned in your book the movie star and the wrestler, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, I believe. That visit kind of gave you some inspiration. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? What did he say? What could he have possibly said in just a moment that made a difference?
So I remember that day very vividly. My mother and my little brother and I, we were starving. We hadn't eaten for maybe a few days. And most of the meals that I got around that time of my life were from school lunch because we had free lunch systems and whatnot. And I remember it was a summer day and there was a new movie coming out in a couple of months. And there was this flyer saying The Rock was going to come and showcase his brand new movie in the hood. And I was like, there's no way, because this park that he wanted to showcase it at, I was like, that's deep in the hood. No one's going to expect a big time movie star to come out and show the movie for free to the community and whatnot. But my mom, she was telling us, no, it's real. It's not fake. And we're going to go and there's probably going to be food there. And so we went and we were part of the hype and the excitement of, hey, we're going to see this big time movie star.
Yeah.
And I just remember telling my family, like, I was so pessimistic about the Rock actually showing up. And when he did show up and he gave such a grand speech and he showed us the movie and there was food and there was really a community-based activity that just brought us all together. I was so excited. I really wanted to hold on to every detail of that experience. And one of the things that stuck out the most to me was the speech The Rock gave. When he looked at me in the crowd, looked at me dead in the eye, and he's like, I believe in you. And this cycle of gangs and drugs and violence does not have to be your future.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most important experiences I've ever had in my life that's pushed me further.
Have you ever tried to let him know that? Have you ever tried to contact him on social media, let him know how much that meant? Or
I have recently tried to send him a copy of the book. Well, fingers crossed to see if his team reads it and say they really want to talk to me about it. But I am trying to show him some of the fruits of his labor, because I've had other experiences like that where I've actually been able to meet some of the people who have mentored me from afar. And I say, hey, I understand that you built the biggest robotics competition in the world for high schoolers. Did you know that that's the only reason why I was able to eat dinner at night?
Yeah.
Or did you know that that's the experience that was the catalyst for me going to college? And I've shown that to these mentors who've mentored me from afar, who started these programs, who might have had this impact on me. And I've seen their faces light up, and they could have never known the true impact of what they've been doing had not I reached out to them and shown them where my life is and where it's come from.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do that for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but he's not the easiest person to contact.
He's probably pretty busy. You mention throughout the book, and let me explain a little bit further to the audience as we go along here. We're setting the stage to kind of let you know the situation that Yohance was in. And he was, by anybody's measuring stick, has accomplished some fantastic things. And he mentioned his mentoring, and quite frankly, I don't want to say it's luck, but a lot of people just don't meet the right people at the right time, and you're so fortunate that you did. Another thing is that you had an inner voice, and you mentioned that a number of times throughout your book. I'm kind of curious, when did that voice emerge? When did you start noticing it?
Very young age, actually. I remember that voice speaking to me at a very young age, telling me right from wrong, and never shaking it off, seeing it as wisdom that was beyond myself. But it's just never been so profound as it was in some of those stories. And I remember recanting some of those stories from high school, and I'm writing that book. And I'm like, that was so profound. Like, I was yelling at myself to do this and to do that. And the voice didn't sound anything like my own voice. And it was completely against maybe something I wanted to do, but it was the right choice to make.
Yeah. As you were on your journey, and we don't need to go into the details about this, but as you were going through your journey, you talk about an encounter that you had. And when I was listening to the book and you started describing this beautiful woman that, for whatever reason, had a very active interest in you, and she wanted to take you home, I knew something, there was a foreboding there. I knew something, not good was going to happen. When something deeply personal and private about you gets violated, what is the best advice you can give someone for recovery and not let it hold you back? You very easily could have fallen into an emotional hole, but you managed to kind of steamroll past it. What gave you that strength? What gave you that conviction?
A big part of it's time, because I don't want to make it seem like there's a easy solution that's going to work tomorrow. Right. I, for years, would not talk about the situation that we're talking about here, where I was raped. And I couldn't find the strength to grow the number of people to lean on to talk about it with.
Yeah.
And when I started to share the story and I started to see how it can affect people and help them grow, they started to look at me like you are right now, that I had some grand answer. And if I had to give certain elements that I know would help someone else, I'd put that you need to take the time that you need. And you also need to be willing to go down to the bottom of where that puts you emotionally.
Yeah.
And experience that and let that make you grow as a person. Let that build your character as opposed to tearing you down.
Yeah.
And there's a huge amount of acceptance that comes from it. When you accept where you've been and where you are now and how you're a better person for the trials and tribulations you've been through, that will definitely help an individual to push forward from something that can be so traumatic.
Yeah. Now, you did talk to somebody almost immediately after that, if I have the description of the book correct, when you were getting a ride home. That's very important. And if I may be so bold here, I want to say something. Prior to our interview today, I kind of told you that I do a lot of work for some of the nonprofits and mental health groups here where I'm from. And especially for men of color, it is almost impossible to get them to admit that they need emotional assistance. it's almost like admitting you're not a man. It's admitting that you are weak. And so many times these fine young people put themselves through things that they just are unnecessary because all they had to do was ask for help. So how would you address that?
I would address it by trying to help folks understand the human condition. We're not perfect. We need each other. And we have a draw to help one another. And you need to lean on us as a community and just forsake color and culture and just realize that us as human beings want to help each other and be vulnerable so that you can be stronger.
Yeah. That's one of the things that we often tell people is acknowledging that you have an issue that you need help with is probably one of the bravest things you can do. And a lot of people fight this when it comes to things like depression and things. And I've tried to, if you hurt your elbow, you go to the doctor. If you're depressed, there's help that's there. And there's no reason why you should feel bad by accessing it. Now, as you mentioned, you have had the good fortune of some good mentors, and this sparked an interest in technology for you. Can you speak a little bit about the importance of mentorship and positive role models and getting interested in things like technology?
Yes. So the power of mentors and how they push me toward some of the technology I wanted to work around. Growing up, I used to say the same jingles everyone else would say when they say, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
Doctor, lawyer, firefighter, teacher. You only say the things that you really understand. But having more mentors in my life who just understand the world in a different, more fundamental way and saying, hey, there's other options, that really broadened my scope of like, I could problem solve in this way and that way. And me tinkering with these wires, that's something. That's a job. That's engineering.
Yeah.
So those different mentors who came into my life and showed me these things, they helped me see different opportunities that I needed, because there was a point in that, and I say it in the book too, where I really needed a job. I needed to be able to provide for my family, but there were so many things that were pulling at me. And I said, what's going to grow me as a person? What's going to make sure that I'm working, but still working on myself?
Yeah.
And that's when I got that summer internship at the Aerospace Corporation. So here I was, a high school student working on building satellite parts for a defense contractor for the Air Force. I mean, it was amazing just being in that area. And it wasn't just because I was good at working with technology. It was also the social skills that I had built by just speaking with different levels of professionals all throughout my time of garnering these great mentors. And they would see it in me, but it's not enough just to see it in someone. You have to foster it in the people that you mentor.
Sure.
I say it's one of my superpowers, because I can grab the greatest mentors and get exactly what I need from them. And they love it. And the exchange is just, it's so overwhelmingly positive.
This obviously led into your acceptance, your internship into the United States Air Force. Do you want to describe just a little bit of that part of your life, that part of your success?
Are we talking the internship or the Air Force
how it kind of transitioned into the academy?
Okay, so the Air Force Academy is for many of the listeners who are not understanding the level of complexity of getting into a service academy. It's about the same size of the application as 10 Ivy Leagues combined.
Yeah.
So even though I was applying to Harvard and Stanford and Yale and a lot of different other high-end colleges and universities, I said, there's no way that I'd get into the Air Force Academy. It takes an act of God. You got to know somebody, and you got to know your calculus. It's all in one big ball. And I started to reflect on if the accomplishments that I've come by so far have made me someone who'd be qualified to reach for something so grand. And here I was in my laboratory at the Aerospace Corporation, working on trying to problem solve to get something more efficient for one of our satellite pieces. And I'm like, hey, I'm 16 years old doing this. I think I'm definitely on the level where I could achieve something even greater. So that's what led me down a path to say, I can apply to attend the United States Air Force Academy, a very prestigious school, and get my degree from there and go on and be an officer in the Air Force.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of lofty thinking at the time, because I said, hey, maybe I'm already on the trajectory to become great.
Yeah. Well, mentioning the effort and degree of difficulty, having listened to your book, to prepare to be qualified to, apply to the academy required concentrating on your studies. And when you're in the environment that you were in, you're talking about getting on this bus, getting off that train, going here, going there for 2 hours, to get to a place where you could do your studies, get back home. This is a lot of effort that, quite frankly, a lot of people just aren't built for. I mean, the studies are hard enough, but when you throw everything else in there, it's an awful lot to overcome. And I'm gonna throw you a curveball. I'm gonna throw you a real wild pitch.
I'm ready.
Okay. You have seen a cross section of society that, I'll speak for myself, that I probably haven't seen. You've seen, the very worst up to the very best. You've seen the people who just don't care about anything to people who are the most caring people in the world. You've seen different levels of success, and that could be defined by different things. It can be defined by being a good family person or whatever. And you've also seen failure. You've seen it from different socioeconomic groups, different ethnic groups. I could go on down the line. You've seen this whole play out. Mm-hmm. Now, with that being said, there's an old argument about nature versus nurture. Okay.
Correct.
And that's something that's a big discussion amongst people who are into psychology and human development and these other things. And I've seen it go, both ways. There's no doubt that when you see a 5-year-old child in a Nazi uniform, he's being indoctrinated into something that is no fault of his own. Mm-hmm. And when you're indoctrinated into something like that, it can be very hard to overcome because you're in the environment all the time. But there are people who overcome it. Mm-hmm. It goes the other direction, too. I've known people who have been given every opportunity in the world. They come from loving parents. Their siblings are all successful to some degree. They're good people. They may not be physics majors, but they're successful people. They manage their lives well, but they have chosen to go down a dark path. And it's referenced in religion. It's called the incorrigibly wicked. There are those who will turn away from the light at every opportunity. What kind of a mix is at play in our society today? There's so many people struggling. Are there some people that are just destined to be successful? They have that inner voice. They have that strength that you did. And there are some people that no matter what you do for them, they are destined to self-destruct. What do you think is at play?
So to answer this question, I'm going to have to lean very hard on my faith.
Yeah.
I'll have to tell you, it's one thing for us to have a plan for ourselves, but it's a whole nother to fit into the folds and the pages that God's already laid out. Okay. So I do mentor a lot of people that I wish to try their hardest and to really make something of themselves. But I am very accepting of their free will and their ability to find their own niche or to not find it. And I don't have the outlook that it's always going to be positive. I know where I fit in this puzzle that God's put together, and I'm running my hardest to serve my purpose.
Yes. That's a good answer, and that's probably the best way that you can look at it. But I mean, I can tell you that your story is amazing to me because, like I said, on so many levels, the resistance you had from your own community, the resistance you had from the system at large, and the difficulty of getting the education that you did was more than just studying all the extra hours and just transportation and getting from A to B, and sometimes not the safest situations. If I can't imagine anybody whose respect you do not command. I can't imagine that. What are you doing now? You mentioned you have a nonprofit and some other things. Yeah. What are some of the things that you're up to now?
So I run a nonprofit, a 501c3 organization, formally recognized by the IRS and under IRC as a 509A2. I work with really smart people, and to sum it up in as few words as possible, we're change makers.
Yeah.
We're trying to make this world a better place, and it's through storytelling, it's through seminars, it's through a lot of action that we do in order to make the community, make the world the place that we want it to be.
Yeah.
Now, and a lot of building some of the capital of that goes into selling some products such as books and giving speeches at different corporations where we're pushing the message of what we're trying to do in our communities and build the mentors to go out and have those tools to be able to make our society the way we want it to be.
Sure.
We really want people to foster in themselves the feeling that they want to help.
Yeah.
Because we all do.
Mm.
You just need that avenue. You need to see how it affects folks and what are the fruits of your labor. And that's why when you said, hey, have I reached out to Dwayne The Rock Johnson and told him what are some of the fruits of his labor? It's like, I am actively trying to do that with him and with a lot of the other celebrities. Like, my book will probably be in the hands of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in about a week because I didn't know how connected we were.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to spread that message, not just through my nonprofit, but through every action that I do as I serve my purpose.
Yes. We touched on this. I'll ask you one more quick question here. When we were talking before the interview about empathy, you do very obviously fine work with your organization, inspiring others to do better for themselves and what have you. But in terms of the outer part of society, the part that we kind of have to get through every day, making people empathetic to someone's plight, someone who comes from an area where they don't have the best opportunities. They're not born on third base, so getting to home isn't so easy, And in my experience with this is that people unfortunately get empathy when it happens to their kid, when it happens, whatever it is. With the LGBT community, for example, I heard comments over the years, well, those people don't want rights, they want special rights, and all those things up until the time it's their kid who gets glue poured on their head. And then they say, well, why didn't the school do something to protect my child? You can obviously see he or she is different. Then the bells go off. It has to happen to you before you have empathy for it. And teaching empathy, getting that across is very difficult by my experience. You can make people say the right words if they work for you, but getting them to feel it is very difficult. That change comes very slow. How have you approached that?
I'm really good at approaching this subject because my personality and my just different quirks and different techniques that I use, I can be everyone's best friend. And a lot of folks like, how? It's like, well, I'm a jock. I'm a nerd. Yeah. I so many different communities and so many different groups that I can be a part of and understand and have empathy for them because a piece of me is involved in that. And once you make the story broader and you don't just make it LGBTQ, but you make it more human rights and what's good and what's right and what's moral, and you start to bring people together on things that they always knew they agreed on, but they never made the subject as concrete and as simple as it should be. Like, do you care about America? You do? Then we're on the same team. We all love each other. Do you care about human beings? You do. We love, it's easier to empathize when you tell the story correctly. And a lot of times that's just changing the headline. Yes.
That's a great point. Great point. Where can people find out more about you online?
So they can find out more about me through all my website links and all my Twitters and Instagram. Then it's all at YA Salimu. And the website right now for the nonprofit is www.geospatial. It's a mouthful. Geospatialqa.com. And in general, they can Google my name because it's very unique. If you Google Yohance Salimu, you always come up with me.
Yes. Here again, the book is called The Underprivileged Overachiever. Excuse me, let me try that again. The Underprivileged Overachiever, a Crenshaw Story. And here again, it's available on Amazon. You can pick it up in a number of various different forms. Before I let you go, I'll give you kind of the last point to spring off of. What would be your message of hope for anyone who's in difficult circumstances, no matter what they are, especially when it's someone who's younger, who doesn't have the perspective that time is going to go by. When you're 16, 17 years old, you feel that this is the way it's going to be forever. What would be your inspiration of hope to help somebody, not only directly, but maybe a family member who's going through something and they just can't seem to understand that there's a future worth fighting for?
So for that person, what I need them to understand is that the ups and downs, the roller coaster that life is, it makes us so much stronger to go through these trials and tribulations, to where you'll see people further down the line who've never, something so small as stubbed their toe, and now they're stubbed their toe and it's the end of their world. And you're saying, hey, well, I had this happen to me and that happened to me. You know what? Cling to those experiences that you have, that grow you, that grow your character, and be willing to become that person, that much better person that you're going to become in the future, and see that. And you'll be okay through any obstacle you're facing right now, because you know it's making you a better man or woman for tomorrow.
Yes. Fantastic message. The book is called The Underprivileged Overachiever, a Crenshaw Story. Now, I noticed that you're listed as the author as Y.A. Salimu.
Correct.
But your name is Yohance Salimu. And boy, I'll tell you, my wife and I listened to the book. And I probably should say there's some material in there that some people might find a little shocking, although I didn't think it was overbearing, but there might be some people, there's some R-rated, let's say, discussion in there. But it's well worth listening to, because it's important that the context of what you went through and everything around you is told, because it's part of your story. And I want to thank you for your positive message and telling your story and encouraging other people to be strong with their emotional and mental health and the things they need to do.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, I will tell our audience again one more time, The Underprivileged Overachiever, a Crenshaw Story. The author is listed as Y.A. Salimu. Please check that book out. My name is Billy Dees. Thank you very much for listening to our podcast today. A great discussion. You can follow me on Twitter, real easy to find, at Billy Dees. I'm Billy Dees. Thank you very much for listening, and have an awesome day. Well, hello everyone. I am Billy Dees from the self-titled Billy Dees Podcast. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and many more of the best podcast networks. Join me for my commentary and interviews. Follow me on Twitter, real easy to find, at Billy Dees. I am Billy Dees. I'd love to have you listen in.